Hello and welcome to the EDHRECast, where we're all about commander, data, and dad jokes. I'm Joey Schultz, and I'm joined by my puntastic co-host. Whenever the Strixhaven creatures on his battlefield become prepared, he's going to start singing Scar Song from The Lion King. It's Matt Morgan.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's actually a true fact about me. I love the prepared spells. But actually, I got a piece of trivia that I picked up at MagicCon Las Vegas for you. So do you know what happens when a microscope collides with a telescope?
I couldn't tell you.
It creates a kaleidoscope.
Whoa. Okay, I love that one. Like, unironically, that's not even like a dad joke. It's too good. That's actually a great joke, Matt. I really like that.
You're welcome. That's actually not trivia. A listener did tell me that joke this weekend. But yeah, it was super fun. We actually got to meet a whole bunch of our fans from MagicCon Vegas. It's always a good time getting to go to play Magic, and I actually did get to play Magic this time.
Hey, yeah, I'm so glad. And yes, for folks wondering, this is an episode that we're recording right after Vegas, as you can tell by the fact that my voice is still very, very sore.
The fact that both of us have bags under our eyes that just look like they could stop a flood.
Yeah, it was a fantastic, wonderful time. So happy to meet all the folks that we did. Great time. But Matt, for the purposes of this video here, this episode, I asked our Duchess of Data, Julia Maddalena, to help me out with finding the commanders that have some of the weirdest mana curves in the entire game. And I want to show them to you because they are absolutely wild and wacky. Let's talk about some mana curves that are very, very unusual.
Well, I'm super curious about this topic because, Joe, you wouldn't even tell me, like, I knew something was suspicious when you said, don't open the show notes yet.
Guilty as charged. Yeah, I want to make a guessing game out of this one. I thought that might be a fun approach. I want to see if you can guess what these commanders are just based off of how weird their mana curves look. And folks listening, see if you can guess along at home. See if you can beat Matt's score.
Yeah.
To get some context, I think maybe let's first start with the average mana curve across all commander decks. We'll start with our first image here. Here we have our average mana curve of all commanders in the entire format with at least 250 decks, so we can get a sense of, in general, what a mana curve usually looks like for most decks out there.
Yeah, if you folks are listening audio only this week, you're definitely going to head over to YouTube, check out the video, because you can play along with me too, because I don't know a whole lot of what's coming up, but I have seen this first image, which is your typical mana curve. Like, you look at it and you think, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You got a couple early game plays, then it kind of curves off a little bit because obviously you don't want to have a ton of 5 and 6 drops in your opening hand. You need to have some early things that you're going to cast in the first few turns of the game. Just that way you're able to participate and kind of keeping up with what everybody else at the table likely is doing.
To describe it, a deck is likely to contain 10 or 11 1-drops. Think your Path to Exiles, Mana Dork, Skullclamp, Esper Sentinels, that type of area there. So about 10 or 11 1-drops, and then usually about 17-ish 2-drops, somewhere around there. And that's like the peak biggest density in a deck on average. Mana rocks are a big thing there, your ramp spells, and then, instants like Heroic Intervention and counter spells, but also creatures like Blood Artists, all that type of stuff is going to fill up that territory, and that ends up being the biggest column here. We see the biggest swell at the 2-drop spot. Then the average of 3 drops is also pretty big. It dips down just a little bit, looking at maybe 14 or 15 3-drops in the average deck. It's usually going to be cool creatures, but also like your Jeska's Will and Propaganda level cards. The 2 and 3-drop spot is the highest concentration by far, because those are the kinds of stuff that make for good early plays, but that also can fill in the gaps in later turns to make sure that you're using all of your mana efficiently.
Okay.
Predictably, from there, the curve trends downward. We see on average that there are almost as many 4-drops as there are 1-drops in the typical commander deck. There may be 9 or 10 of those, but this is really where the numbers start to fall off and dwindle. There will be maybe 5 or more 5-drops in a typical deck. There are probably like 3-ish 6-drops, but the numbers get vanishingly smaller from there. And again, these are all rough estimates, as we've seen in an average compilation of all of the 8 million plus decks in the database of all commanders that were showing at least 250 decks in the database. We don't want any outlier commanders that only have 10 decks to their name in a very small sample size to radically affect the data that we're showing here.
So yeah, you have your biggest density there. Like, that's where you kind of get the meat and potatoes of your typical deck. But then, yeah, you also want to have some power for later on in the game, which is why you can't neglect completely those 5 mana, 6 mana plus slots either.
Mm-hmm. And I think this can be an important exercise to investigate our own mana curves, because it is such an important part of deck building. a mana curve, a proper distribution of having enough stuff that you can do in the early game, but also some things that you'll ramp towards in the later game, some big powerhouse cards. Getting that distribution just right is a really important part of deck building. And so when there are these commanders that have really good strategical reasons to completely throw those heuristics out the window, that's fascinating. And that could help us learn more about our own decks. So I hope folks enjoy this topic for that reason, to see the most extreme examples to help them understand their own decks a little bit better.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, as we're talking about things like mana curve, we do have to mention a couple of the things that could cause like outliers or misrepresentations on here. For instance, X spells or delve spells like Dig Through Time, those are going to show as different spots on the mana curve than what you're actually paying for them. So definitely keep those types of things in mind. There are a couple of extra facets that do affect how we can view mana curves.
Right. Stuff like Everflowing Chalice that is technically a 0 drop on your mana curve, but it never actually effectively casts as 0 mana.
Indeed.
Yep.
But in general, this is just the average that we're seeing, which will help to give context to why some commanders have such outlandish and really different looking mana curves. And as a quick teaser for the end of this episode, I'll also show you the average based on each bracket, but that'll come a little bit later, because for now, I just want to set our good baseline here so that we can get some context for why this first deck that has one of the weirdest mana curves is indeed so weird. Matt, tell me what you think about this one here.
Why is there so much at 6? That's all I'm going to ask. So for folks that aren't watching, there's like nothing here. Like you look at the average, I'm guessing there's like 1 or 2 cards at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you look at 6 and it's all 6 drops. And this, I honestly have no clue. I have no idea.
Yeah, to paint a picture here, on each of these images, we'll be able to see the average mana value that we noticed earlier imprinted over this so we can see what the average is in comparison to where this particular commander's page is. And in this case, it has an average of about 2 1 drops, 2 2 drops, 2 3 drops, like 1 4 drop, 3 5 drops. But then it has 36 6 drops and 10 7 drops. It's like flat, 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 huge spike. What do you think might be going on here? Guess along at home. I hope you can guess it.
My only inkling is, and not the inklings that you're casting in Strixhaven.
Wow.
My only inclination, I guess, would be, what is the companion that everything has to be mana value 3 or more?
Oh, Karuga.
Yeah, Karuga. But even then, this is all 6 mana. That's not 3 mana. So like, honestly, Joey, I am stumped out the gate. I have no idea. This is so silly that everything, it's all 6 and 7 drops.
Yes.
So I play Vivictus as Mahdi the Dyer, and I love that deck. And that's like I joke that my curve starts at 6. This truly does start at 6, though. I don't know what commander this is, but I bet it rules, because this is the type of deck I would probably play, too.
It is. You were not far off. It is a Gruul partner pairing, actually, of Galanra and Alina. So Galanra is the mana dork partner commander in green that will give you benefits and draw you cards if you cast 6 drop cards.
Okay.
That is why you would see a huge peak there. There's also, though, that's a 3 mana commander who then immediately on turn 4 will let you cast the 5 mana partner, which also gives you a bunch of mana. Both of these are just huge mana producers. So your early turns are spoken for. You go right from Galanra into Alina, and then both of them start pumping up so much mana. This is a curve that really does echo your Evictus example of, the stuff starts on 6 because the early turns are already spoken for based off of the fact that your commanders are curving out in a specific way on turns 3 and 4.
I'm really curious to see, just going off of this, because like you said, your curve starts at 3, you're casting your commander. I'm really curious to see how much the commander and just whatever is in the command zone, because obviously we have more than just commanders, we have backgrounds, we have partners, all that kind of fun stuff. I'm curious to see how much that influences what these curves are look like, or if it's going to be like super commander dependent. But now that I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, I see where the appeal is here.
Don't worry, not all of the examples here are going to be partners, though, I promise. In fact, there are a couple of really popular commanders coming up in these examples.
And there's over 2,600 decks, too, so it's not like this is an unheard of thing. It's in the top 1,000 of all the top commander decks you're going to see out there anyways. But yeah, Gruul do big, stompy things. Like this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, these aren't just obscure commanders that no one is actually playing, and therefore the sample size is pretty small. These are commanders that consistently we're seeing a lot of average across a huge density of decks, and I do find this particular one super fascinating. And in fact, with this one, it's not just the mana curve that's a little bit funny, but if you look at the average type distribution as well, it's like 38 lands and then 50 creatures. So folks who are playing this deck, they are committing really hard, and you got to respect that. But I do think that this is a very fun example of a way that actually it can be strategically beneficial to go way off of the rails in some cases. cases.
Yeah, and if you want to see any of these charts for yourself, just for any given commander too, you can just go to the commander page, and underneath, like, we have all that data listed out. So if you go to the charts, which is right underneath the commander images there, you can see the type distribution. So you can see on average just 50 creatures that's being played in this deck, 38 lands, along with the mana curve and everything there too. And that goes for every commander, not just for the commanders that we're going to talk about today. So if you want to do some investigative journalism yourself, you're able to do that when you get back to your computer.
And as one last final note, if folks are wondering how it is that we've drawn some of this data, it is based off of Wasserstein distance from the typical average curve, in case any of you stats-minded folks out there are curious about what's going on here.
Yep.
Okay, so Matt, that was just our first example. Now let's get to another, guessing which commander this mana curve belongs to. It's also extremely funky. We'll throw that one on screen here. To be exact on the curve here, the bars on this graph are sort of going like in every other column.
Interesting.
So this average deck contains 13 1-drops, then 8 2-drops, perfectly respectable, then 15 3-drops, but then only 1 4-drop, and then 8 5-drops, but then only 1 6-drop, but then 12 7-drops, but then no 8-drops, but then 5 9-drops. Matt, can you tell what might be going on with this commander and why it looks so strange in the average curve?
So there's a theme here, and it's only odd mana values that is like really hyper focused in on. So I have 2 guesses that I think might be there. So one is going to be Obosh the Prey Piercer, because that's the companion that you can only have as your companion if you have, I believe it's all cards mana value that are odd numbered. So like 1 3 5, etc. It's either that, or I only know it's because I've played against it, because you have this deck, Yenet, I think Cryptic Sovereign, is that the full name of Yenet?
That's the full name.
I'm going to guess it's one of those 2, because that, like, they both dial in on that theme of like odd number mana values here. So, and since we're seeing that, yeah, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. Those are going to be my guesses.
You're spot on the money. This is the mana curve for Yenet, Cryptic Sovereign.
There we go.
Done.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I know we're not keeping score, but that counts as a 3-pointer.
That counts as a 3-pointer?
Counts as a 3-pointer, yeah.
3's an odd number, so that absolutely belongs here. Yeah, those commanders that do care about specific mana costs are obviously going to affect things here. What I actually think is so fascinating about this one isn't just like, oh yeah, Yenet is going to care about an excessively higher number of 7 or 9 drops than the typical deck, because you can get away with cheating them into play with her attack trigger.
Yeah, you're not casting them anyways.
Yeah. What's actually really funny about this, though, is that some of the companion cards, when they're the commander, such as Obosh, like you mentioned, who cares about odd mana cards, it doubles your damage from odd mana. When we look at those legends as commanders, based off of the particular algorithm that we're using here in the Wasserstein distance, they're not actually deviating that far from the typical average motion.
Interesting.
Like, to use Obosh as an example, we do see like 11 1-drops, 10 2-drops, 24 3-drops, very few 4-drops, like only 3 of them or something like that, and then 11 5-drops. And that does sound initially like, oh, that's pretty different compared to the usual spikes that we saw earlier, right? But it does actually still follow roughly that same type of shape, where we care a whole lot about the concentration of cards in the 2 and 3-drop area. You do still want a good number of 2-drops to have something to do in the early game with. So Obosh is a little unusual, but it's not the most extreme version of unusual. Again, clarifying though, that is when those legends are used as commanders. When they are used as companions, like if we look at the most popular Obosh companion pairing, it's Jeska, Thrice Reborn, and Vile Smasher the Fierce are the most common combination for Obosh as a companion. Then we definitely see the effects of that companion restriction affecting their average data a lot. But just because your commander does care about a certain mana cost doesn't always mean that it definitely will have an unusual looking mana curve. It is an outlier, it's just not the most extreme outlier like some of the other examples we've got. Yenet's mana curve is a little different compared to that, but yeah, that's just kind of a funny thing that I wanted to highlight here.
Yeah, it's super funny that, yes, it's very condensed into those first few 3 turns. And yeah, there's a couple 2-drops in there, but after that, and if it's not something you can cast for free off of Yenet, they're just not in the deck. Like there's averages 1 4-drop, 1 6-drop, 0 8-drops, but 5 9-drops. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
A lot of very strange and interesting lessons to learn from these. Sometimes it is these qualities of a deck that do allow it to stand out from the rest of the pack. And so while you do generally want to stick to a pretty reasonable mana curve, sometimes your commander will let you get away with silly stuff like this. Those are a couple of early examples. We've got even more to get to. Real quick though, Matt, before we get to any further strange and weird looking mana curves, let's do a couple of quick shout outs.
Well, first off, I want to give a very, very special shout out to Dragon Shield, who they unveiled some amazing new products at MagicCon Las Vegas. So if you are looking and itching to get your hands on some new deck boxes, their new Dragon Lock system is
It's so good.
Probably one of the coolest things. You get that dragon shield quality that you love. It's going to protect your cards, but also they're just handsome looking deck boxes. They're going to keep everything secure. Like the magnets are amazing. They even have that slot where you can show off your commander. So if you have some super cool art, maybe an artist proof, stuff like that you really want to show off, these new Dragonlock boxes have a chance to do that now.
And they also revealed the new guild sleeves too, which I'm so excited about.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting Azorius sleeves for my mom's Azorius decks, like stuff like that. Like those sleeves are also so sleek and sick. I love them.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for all of this and more coming out this summer. After seeing everything they have coming up, it really is going to be the summer of Dragon Shield. So whether you want the new sleeves, you want the new deck boxes, all that, they have so many product launches coming this summer. It's going to be amazing. So if you want to get your hands on any of this for yourself, head to dragonshield.com/EDHRECast. That's going to get you over there. Let them know that we sent you. But you can use coupon code EDHREC, all lowercase. That's going to get you a discount in the process. So make sure you use coupon code EDHREC and get yourself all of the amazing new products and a discount at the same time. It's just a win-win. And it's one of the reasons we just love working with Dragon Shield.
This show is also brought to you by you, our fantastic, phenomenal patrons at patreon.com/EDHRECast. Supporting the show in free ways means so much to us, means everything, reviews, likes, notifications, because YouTube's homepage is sometimes getting really crowded, and they're doing this new hype thing as well, so hyping the video is also so clutch. But also, if you enjoy what we do, you can support us over on Patreon, where we have a bunch of perks to say thank you for your support over there, whether it's access to our challenge to stats spreadsheet of all the challenges that we've done in the entire show's history, or our Patreon exclusive Discord, and more. Also, one of our favorite things to do here too is shouting out our patrons. So Carlo Dorestein, big shout out to you. May your opening hands always contain a good distribution of lands and mana rocks and card advantage. Thank you so much for your support on Patreon.
Yeah, may your curves not look like some of these mana curves are about to look like here in a few seconds, because it's I'm sure if we're making a whole show about it, Joey, then they're going to be a little bonkers.
Yeah, they're a little strange. In fact, let's get to the next one right now. Here's a lovely orange looking number for you. This one probably doesn't immediately look too strange compared to the average. In this case, though, the real standout is how many 1 and 2 drops there are. This curve is showing an average of 2 0 drops, 20 1 drops, 32 2 drops, but then it falls way off. There's like 7 3 drops, 2 4 drops, and then 1 5 drop and 1 6 drop, and then nothing else. So a huge condensed amount in the 1 and 2 drop area. Matt, do you have a guess what this commander might be?
This one has a pretty significant tell, I think. So everything being so consolidated to 1 and 2 mana, the fact that there's so few remainders at 3 kind of throws off one. So I built a Squall Seed Mercenary deck, which is all about grabbing things from 3 or less out of the graveyard. It could be that, but I also think just because it's all 1 and 2, it's probably the Scourge of Vintage, and it's Lurrus, the companion Lurrus, that's all about getting 1s and 2s out of your graveyard. That's my guess.
All right, well, this game stopped being fun because you're too good at it, actually. Yeah, it's Lures of the Dream Den. Fine, you're good at Magic.
Yes!
All right.
All right. All right. Well, I mean, 2 for 3. If I were playing baseball, that'd be a really good percentage.
Yes, yeah, no, that's good. And I do think that some of these commanders that focus specifically on hey, I care about these particular mana values are always going to have those types of tells.
Yeah.
So we're softballing a couple of the early examples.
No. I'm just very good at this game, Joey. You said it yourself.
Yeah, no, I did. Yep.
But it is true. I kind of hypothesized earlier in the episode how much are the commanders that really tell you how you want to build the deck. Are they going to truly be prevalent in these types of charts? And so far we've had 2 that were, well, all 3 of them have been very specific, and especially with Galandra and Alina. That's telling you exactly what you want to be doing, and you're able to support it in the command zone. There's other commanders out there, I think, that could be mimicking what Lurrus is doing here, though. You look at some of those combo style commanders where you have stuff like Jorah Weatherlight Captain, which is all about, is it artifacts, and you cast an artifact, you draw a card. That one also specifically, it's telling you, but not specifically telling you. So I think there's going to be some charts that we look at in a little bit that are kind of teetering on the commanders not telling you, but strongly recommending what you do.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a really great point of comparison is the Jorah example. Even just pulling up her chart on EDHREC here, you would expect her to be I don't know, maybe 20 zero drops or something like that. You would expect her to have an unusual mana curve. But when you pull it up, it actually does conform to most of the average that we see. There are a lot more zero drops than usual, but the rest of the deck follows in basically the exact same pattern that most of the other mana curves do, which I do think is an important thing to highlight as a contrast to this Lurrus example that we just gave here. What I think is so fascinating about Lurrus is that when you do have a mana curve that is so front-loaded in this way, you have to plan very carefully what your end game is going to be.
Yeah.
Like some of these commanders do mechanically justify themselves to have very strange, wacky, wonky looking mana curves, but that does cause certain areas of the game to become a lot more difficult compared to their contemporaries. For Lurrus, finding out how it is that I'm going to take all of these 1 and 2 drops and make them lethal on turn 9 or whatever, that's an uphill climb.
Yeah.
Whereas for Yannette, that deck has a whole lot more 7 and 9 drops than basically anyone else, any of the other decks at the table will, which could mean that your opening hands are a lot harder to get. And you might have to, mulligan more aggressively. So when you have a weird mana curve, sometimes that is justified by the commander, but it does affect how it is that you've got to approach the rest of that game because it invites certain weaknesses that other players won't have in their hands.
Yeah, well, and whenever the commander gives you a cap on what you're doing, like Lurrus does, and I'm looking at Squall Seed Mercenary now, which has the same kind of thing where you get a decent amount of 1s, a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, and then it falls off the face of the planet because you're playing like maybe 2 or 3 4s and 5s. So
right.
I'm glad to see Squall is kind of doing the same thing because like Lurrus, both of these commanders are saying like, if you want to do the thing, it has to be at this mana value or less. And so it's really pushing everything to the side when it comes to your mana curve.
I could also see like, all right, let me throw in this 1/7 drop here so that I know I have something that I can do in the late game that's going to be really impactful.
Right.
I think you'd be justified to do that, even if the commander saying, look over here for the most part. That doesn't mean look over here exclusively. So these are things to make sure that you keep in mind as you're playing the game so that you can figure out what your end game will be or what your opening hand should look like, stuff like that. Matt, I'm going to give you 2 examples for our next thing here. These are 2 mana curves that are very similar. These commanders have something in common. They actually, like many of these mana curves, they represent more than just themselves in some way. In this case, what I want to point out is that the reason that they are unusual mana curves is how even they are. There's something in nearly every single column up until like mana value of 12. So these are very evenly, flatly distributed across nearly everything.
Well, and even when I'm looking at it, just with the variance, it's not far off. Like one might have 4 1-drops versus 5, but then just makes up for it with like having 1 more 2-drop instead. So like everything is like going like punch for punch almost in this. To describe these mana curves for the more listening audience, these ones are very flat. There are almost no spikes, but where the average mana values usually fall off of around like the 6, 7, 8, 9 mark, that is not the case here. There's a lot of distribution across nearly every single mana value. These mana curves look extremely similar, but to just describe one of them to help you get a picture in your mind, imagine 1 0-drop and then 4 1-drops, 8 2-drops, 9 3-drops, 7 4-drops. None of these have hit above 10 yet, which is very unusual compared to what we were seeing. Then 4 5-drops, 7 6-drops, 8 7-drops, 3 8-drops, 3 9-drops, 5 10-drops, and even a couple of cards around the mana values of 11, 12, and 13. And like I mentioned, this is actually characteristic of an entire class of commanders. See if you can figure out what's going on here. This is really interesting. I mean, it looks like, honestly, a lot of my decks where like I just care about the end game anyways, and I'll eschew the early game, whatever.
Matt, could you imagine if I was just doing your decks? Like, this is actually the mana cards of just your specific commander decks.
What? It would be a curveball for the audience. But yeah, so this is, I honestly, there's nothing that stands out to me in so much like there's no hints. There's no like tells, which makes it really hard. So like you did a good job at stumping the master here. So I honestly, Joey, I have no idea.
Yeah, these feel very nondescript. There's a whole lot of representation across nearly every single possible mana value, including several 10 drops and 11 drops. If there was any tell here, it might have been that. The reason that these are so unusual is because they belong to colorless commanders.
Okay. There we go.
These are the mana curves for Juladoc Voidgorger and Ultima Origin of Oblivion, which are the 2 most popular colorless commanders in the format.
Okay.
And when you go into colorless mode, you've got a couple of Eldrazi 10 drops and things like that, which naturally you're going to...
You got to play them.
Yeah, you gotta play a few of them, right? But also some of the commanders like Juladoc do care about higher mana values, but you still need to, shore up your early turn so that you can get action, so that you can play enough mana rocks to get to all of those things here. So this is sort of what a mana curve might look like when you really care about some of those crazy top ends. It's like some of the cards in this deck are 10 mana, and I'm definitely going to be hard casting them.
Now that you're saying it, it all makes sense. Because you're playing all these Eldrazi Titans, you're playing all these big, powerful late game stuff, but you need a ton of mana rocks, but also you don't have a bunch of options because you're in colorless. So everything's going to be pretty similar across the board. And like, I was just thinking, like, these are so unremarkable. It's almost remarkable, like how just
I like that.
bland they look. But yeah, now that I have that context, I am not surprised. There's so many mana rocks you have to be playing, and you need some of those bigger mana rocks that people aren't playing in traditional decks where you have access to other types of ramps. So you're playing the Thran Dynamo, you're still playing the like all those 4 mana rocks and Gilded Lotus, stuff like that, in order to get to all those 8 and 9 drops that you're uniquely playing a bunch of in these types of decks.
Yeah, for a colorless commander, it couldn't look similar. You don't have the same distribution of things that you could even play at those early turns, right?
Yeah, because you have no options.
It doesn't stand a chance of looking like any of the other decks do. So that is a thing to be aware of if you are a person playing a colorless deck.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, my mana curve looks strange. Don't worry. That's just a feature of colorless decks in general, as we can see by some of these examples. And these examples do hold true for many of the other colorless commanders too. I just can't fit them all on screen. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's another fun one there.
Yeah, because now I'm looking at Kozilek decks, and you don't have a ton of options. So like this is all you're like allowed to play almost.
All right, Matt, I'm going to keep challenging you here. I'm going to give you another 2 mana curves at the same time here because you figuring out Lurrus so fast made me a little sad. So I'm going to challenge you again with some other mana curves that look extremely similar to what Lurrus was doing. Here they are on the screen for you now. They have a very similar story to what we saw with Lurrus, like almost nothing in terms of 0 drop, but then at mana value of 1, there's like 29 cards. And then at mana value of 2, there's like 20 cards. And then after that, it's a steep drop off of like 7 3-drops and then 4 4-drops and like 2 2 1, like barely anything at all. So another huge concentration of stuff in the mana value slot of 1 and 2, and then a complete drop off. There are 2 examples of this. What do you think might be going on here? And as a hint, it's not like Lurrus. It's not a thing where these commanders specifically say that they care about, mana value 3 or less stuff. That's not what's going on here. So I'm trying to up the difficulty on you a little bit here.
Okay, and we said it's not Jorah Weatherlight Captain because we just said that one has a little more standard. Otherwise, because that would have been my next guess. So it does tail off like a curve normally should. So it just is hyper concentrated in those, like the 1-drops is what's really stumping me here.
That's what makes these ones so unusual for sure, yeah.
I want to say, oh my goodness, the Simic guy that draws a card whenever you attack.
Edric Spymaster Trest?
Edric Spymaster Trest. That was escaping me for a second, thank you. That might be one of them, because that deck is all about playing like little dumpers, 1 and 2 drops, something evasive. You're going to get through and drop a bunch of cards.
Little dumpers is probably getting a new nickname.
I can't say the actual terminology because we're kid friendly here. But Emma Partlow remembers the mono blue deck with a bunch of 1s and 2 drops. She out there dubbed it not dumpers, but something else. But anyways, I think one might be Edric. The other one, I can't think of another commander off the top of my head that's going to be doing the same thing, but I'm also probably going to kick myself when you tell me one. But my best guess, educated wise, is going to be Edric Spymaster Trest. But I can't think of anything else right now that's going to be kind of similar to that.
Well, you're getting the point. You not naming both of them is totally fine. One of them is indeed the mana curve for Edric Spymaster Trest. That second one there that has 29 1-drops, pretty characteristic of a deck that is going to draw you a bunch of cards whenever your little guys hit people. So little evasive creatures, that's very good. The other one is for Shu Yun, the Silent Tempest, a commander that I know you've built in the past.
Yep, I have.
Which also has a huge concentration of 1-drops because that's how you're going to trigger that prowess, and you need the extra mana on your turn to trigger Shu Yun's ability to give yourself the double strike so that you can Voltron your opponents down. All you need is a lot of cantrips to trigger off the prowess to allow you to get double strike, and then to just Voltron and blitz your opponents with commander damage. So these are commanders that sort of just accidentally by their mechanics care about having a huge hyper concentration of 1-drops to enable their abilities. It's not that their card says that they care about, only 2-drops or whatever, but in terms of how it is that you want to build the deck, that is the most efficient way to make them.
Well, and I was looking at it, and I was kind of had an inkling, maybe there's some kind of weird Spellslinger deck out there, and Shu Yun absolutely fits the bill because not only do you want to be casting cheap and efficient spells that are going to like draw you a card and get card advantage coming along, but you're proccing that. I mean, even Feather, the Redeem that you had for a long time, Joey, also I'm sure has a similar curve to this because you want to play the 1-mana God's Willing type of effects to protect Feather, then it comes back to your hand, and you always want to have 1 or 2 mana open. So yeah, Spellslinger decks I'm not surprised are following this curve too. And Edric, yeah, you're playing Slitherblade, you're playing like the Triton Shorestalker, anything that can't be blocked just because you want to draw a bunch of cards. So yeah, both of these, I'm not surprised to see the curve shaking out like this is kind of what I'm saying.
Very astute on the Feather as well. When we pull up her average mana curve on EDHREC, it looks very, very similar to Shu Yun's as well. Slightly higher on the 3-drop, so it doesn't quite meet that description of, the way that we've algorithmically looked at all of this to find the exact, definitely weirdest ones, but Feather is a good grouping underneath that umbrella for sure. A lot of those Spellslinger decks, especially Storm style decks, are going to have curves that probably start to resemble this type of distribution more and more as you make them a little bit more tuned up, a little bit more optimized. So yeah, if your deck cares about casting a lot of spells, maybe it shouldn't look like all of the other mana curves do, because your big blowout turns are going to probably be a big concentration of those small cantrip spells. I would imagine. Matt, you've had some experience playing against Prismari pretty recently.
I did, yeah.
One drops in the deck that gives all your stuff Storm are going to be really, really important for that type of deck. So if you are building in Spellslinger, that could be a good message to take from these is let me make sure that my mana curve doesn't look as normal as everything else does, because my strategy is not doing what everybody else is doing.
All right, Joey. Well, I'm really curious for this education of Matthew Morgan to keep going. All these quizzes that you have, because this has been really, really cool to kind of search through. But real quick, before we get even deeper into that, I think we need to take a break. We need to challenge some stats real quick, and then we can get further into the rest of the episode.
Heck yeah, there's so much to add on EDHREC, but that doesn't mean we always agree with it. Let's get to that.
All right, Joey, well, let me get us started then with our challenge. And so mine this week, I could challenge the entire cycle of all the cards with Paradigm from Secrets of Strixhaven. This cycle just absolutely rules. Every single one does something you want to be doing in that color. Decorum Dissertation is one of my favorite cards from the past several years, I would say. I love this card so much. But one that isn't getting a whole lot of love that I actually think is kind of getting overlooked a little bit is going to be Restoration Seminar. So that is the white Paradigm spell from Secrets of Strixhaven. It is 5 white for a sorcery. It is a lesson in case that matters for your decks. But it says return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It has Paradigm, which that's the new mechanic where you're able to exile the spell after it resolves, and then you cast it at the beginning of your first main phase every single turn. So you get free cast spells. So if you care about anything with spellcraft, anything with casting things from exile, there's a whole lot to like here. So in the red one, it's $15. It's kind of expensive, but you can put that in so many decks, whether it's like Faldorn or Prosper. There's decks, again, across the board that really like this. But the white one, like I said, Restoration Technique has so many homes I just see isn't really getting adopted yet. And I think people are kind of scared by the high mana value. But where I really think it's cool is from an Edge of Eternity's commander, which is Sammy Wildcat Captain. So this is 4 in Boros, or Lorehold, depending on who you ask. 4/4 with double strike and vigilance, but it also says spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. So if you have a commander that gives all of your stuff affinity for artifacts, you don't have to worry so much about that 7 mana investment that you have to spend on Restoration Seminar, because Sammy Wildcat Captain is able to build in that cost reduction. So if you can get Sammy down and then cast that, you look at the typical Sammy deck, and there are a ton of juicy targets that you want to be pulling out of the graveyard with Restoration Seminar.
Right, like Threefold Thunderhulk, Bronze Guardian. There's a lot of good hits.
And a board wipe is going to really set you back, but especially with Sammy, where everything costs you 6-7 mana. I'm sure if you look at the average mana curve of this deck, it's also going to be a little weird, but that just means you have so many more targets for Restoration Seminar. So if you want a deck that's going to reduce the cost of Restoration Seminar and also give you a plethora of good targets to reanimate and pull out of the graveyard, it's not currently being played at all on the page. I know it's a new card. It usually takes a little bit to get adopted, but if you want some juice for your Sammy Wildcat Captain decks, definitely give Restoration Seminar a try.
Right, well, and a deck like this also pulls ahead so fast that people are going to board wipe, and if you were able to cast this, even if the first time that you cast it, there isn't a target in your graveyard, now you always have a thing that for free will give your commander back every single turn.
Yes.
For free will always help you reclaim stuff. That's really clever. I like taking advantage of the high mana cost with the affinity there. That's really good, and yeah, these Paradigm spells are sick. Don't know what else to say.
It doesn't matter if it doesn't do anything the first time that you cast it, because you're only casting it for 2 mana anyways, but then you just get to cast it for free the rest of the game.
Yeah, that's clever. I really like that pick a whole lot, Matt. I'll move to our next challenge here. This is our listener challenge for the episode. Gabriel GS in our patron Discord says, I have a challenge for Sephiroth Fabled Soldier. The Darkness Crystal is a card that has 3 wonderful abilities. One of them being that it reduces your black spells by 1 generic mana. That's really great for a mono black deck, right? But also it says some other stuff that Gabriel's not quite as fond of in the context of a Sephiroth deck here, because the Darkness Crystal also says if your opponent's non-token creatures would die, instead the crystal exiles them. And the third ability is that you can pay a lot of mana to try and nab one of those exiled creatures for yourself, put it onto your battlefield. This card is showing up in 30% of Sephiroth decks right now, and at first, that all seems well. I mean, again, reducing your black spells in a mono black deck, that seems great, and any other text is gravy, right? But Gabriel GS points out here that that second ability, exiling enemy creatures instead of them dying, does not synergize very well with Sephiroth's emblem or with a bunch of the cards in the 99. Like Blood Artist and Conrad and Massacre Worm are all pretty popular in Sephiroth decks, a lot of aristocrat stuff, things that ping off of enemy death triggers. The Darkness Crystal even shuts off one of Sephiroth's main plays, which is to cast something like an Accursed Marauder type of effect that makes everyone sacrifice a creature when it enters the battlefield. That triggers 4 deaths, which Sephiroth then sees those 4 death triggers, and that would flip him over to get that really important emblem. That's one of the most classic ways to flip Sephiroth over right away. You don't want to compromise that by making those cards go to exile instead of letting him see those death triggers. Most Sephiroth decks are taking advantage of opponents' creatures dying in a lot of ways, so Gabriel, I'd say you're right on the money here. The Darkness Crystal is probably a bit overplayed at 30% inclusion in Sephiroth decks. Definitely consider it for a bunch of other places, but maybe reconsider it for this one.
Yeah, you don't want to shut off half what your commander's doing. This is a really good insight. And if you out there in listener land would like to get your hands on any of the cards that we talked about today, or just any cards in general, head over to cardsphere.com/EDHRECast, where you're able to turn all of your unplayed cards into played cards, because you can take all those cards you got at a local draft. Maybe you did some sealed events at MagicCon Las Vegas. Well, now you can get those cards that you aren't going to be using, send them to somebody else who will love them, and get yourself some cards in return over at CardSphere. So if you want to join the biggest and best community of traders on the internet, head to cardsphere.com/EDHRECast.
Okie doke, Matt. Back to a couple of other examples here. We've got another kind of unusual mana curve that I'd love to show you here. It might not look that unusual at first, but there is something kind of funky going on with it. This mana curve is so fascinating. It's almost giving me this like butterfly symmetry to it. At mana value of 1, there are like 4 cards. At mana value of 2, there are like 9 cards. Then at mana value of 3, 12 cards. But at mana value of 4, it dips down to 8. But then at mana value of 5, it goes back up to 13. There's a weird dip in the middle there. Mm-hmm. And then it actually coasts very normally down. It's not a huge drop off or anything. At mana value of 6, there are 8 cards. At mana value of 7, there are 5. And then it's finally cresting down where there's not a whole lot at 8 and 9 or anything further past that. But yeah, a very gentle and extremely symmetrical looking mana curve graph for this commander.
Yeah.
This one is almost kind of a mirror reflection of itself in the way that it curves up, then down, then up, and then gradually goes back down again. I'm going to give you a hint here. This is actually a very popular commander. I want to see whether you can guess what might be going on with you.
A very popular commander. So with that said, it makes me want to think it's something that has to do with cheating costs. Something like, obviously every deck needs that early game interaction. You need that early game stuff to kind of develop your board state. But if you want a whole bunch of going on like 5+ mana, I think this is where you're getting into stuff like Yuriko, Tiger Shadow, where you're able to ninjutsu, and obviously you need some amount of expensive hits off the top of your library to deal a bunch of damage with Yuriko's ability. So that's going to be my first guess, because I keep seeing that 5 mana slot, and I think Force of Will, I think all those expensive counter spells, some ninjas that you can play aren't exactly cheap to cast traditionally, at least, because you're always playing the ninjutsu cots. Oh. So that's where mine's going, but Yuriko's my guess. Here we go.
I really like that guess. That's a great guess. There's a lot of good reasoning there. Unfortunately, I do have to put a loss in the Matt column here. You didn't quite nail it.
All right.
This one is actually for Ashling the Limitless, the 5-color Elementals commander that just came out, who is already ranked number 57 in the data with nearly 20,000 decks.
That precon is a little cracked, yes. It's very, very powerful.
Wild. That becomes
It's unfair.
ridiculous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And the Strixhaven decks are really good too. It's very good. But yeah. So the reasoning here, Ashling Limitless is a 3-mana commander that lets you evoke your elemental spells for 4 mana.
Okay. Yep.
So that's why we're seeing that dip in the 4 mana slot. You want to evoke those elementals in, so usually things that are more expensive than 4 mana, so that you can immediately sacrifice them and then get Ashling's ability to make another copy of those things to get double the enter the battlefield effects from each of the cards that you're playing. So in this case, it's not that your commander is eating up a certain spot on the mana curve, but the commander's ability is like, that's where I want to be spending my 4th turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and a lot of the times the elementals that you're evoking out, they are occupying that 6 mana slot, that 7 mana slots. They're not cheap things to cast, and that's why the evoke is so powerful, because you're able to effectively cheat mana costs and then getting that twice. Like, there's a reason Ashling is already like teetering on the top 50 commanders in the past 2 years, because those abilities are super powerful.
Yeah, and this does have, in some ways, some of the effects that you were kind of gesturing towards with your Eureka guess there, that there are potentially some cards in here that are deceptive in their mana costs. You know, a Mole Drifter, for instance, in this deck is showing as a 5, but is going to be often played as a 3. So that is the other kind of thing that can really throw off your mana curve too, that is very worth paying attention to when you're looking at your deck distribution. Some of those things might be deceptive, like a Dig Through Time is going to show as an 8-drop, but I'm not actually paying 8 mana for it. And conversely, if there's an Exsanguinate in a deck, that's going to show as a 2, but I'm not paying 2 mana for that either. So this is a good reminder to pay very careful attention to how much mana you're actually paying for each of those cards in your deck.
Yeah, I think a really good example of this right here is in my Witherbloom deck, where I'm playing a bunch of either X spells that are, going to throw off the curve and make it look a little skewed towards, the lower end of the curve. But then I also have a bunch of cards that are like 6 and 7 mana, but I'm only ever paying 1 mana for it. Like, I'm never paying full price for so many of those cards. So yeah, being able to pay attention to where on your curve you actually are casting a lot of those spells makes a huge, huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to another one. Here's another very unusual distribution here. I really like this one, actually, because it's doing this thing where it starts very normal. This is a mana curve that at first appears to abide by the traditional graph. So to get the image in your mind, this commander runs an average of 10 1-drops and 15 2-drops, but then it starts to dip back down right away, only to come up again later. There are 7 3-drops, 5 4-drops, only like 2 5-drops. That seems pretty important. But then instead of cresting down like we normally see, it crests back up. At the 6-drop slot, there are 5 cards there. At the 7-drop slot, there are 8 cards there. And at the 8-drop slot, there are 11 cards. There's nearly as many 8-drops as there are 2-drops in the average list.
Interesting.
This is a mana curve that looks like it's fine, and then it crests all the way back up near the top end in the 8-drops for some reason. What do you think is that reason?
So just because Ashling is what we just did, in the back of my brain, I'm thinking there's got to be some like creature type that's going on here that like what typically skews really expensive. I don't think it's dragons, because dragons still at least has some juice, and like especially the 5 slot, that's where dragons really gets going, because you have stuff like Terror of the Peak. So I don't think it's a dragon commander. I'm trying to think of what is other, like Tree Folk. No, because that still would kind of be the same thing.
Also a decent guess though.
I don't know. This is another stumper here. It's so weird that, like you said, it dips down, but then it goes right back up. It's kind of got this like reverse bell curve to it. I have no idea. Am I gonna feel silly when you tell me?
No, I think you're going to say, that's a commander? I've never seen that before. But it is a popular commander. It is within the top 300. It has nearly 8,000 decks to its name. This is the mana curve for Marvo Deep Operative.
That's not a real commander.
I told you
that up.
yeah, I told you.
Marvo Deep Operative. All right.
This is a 5-mana 1/8 octopus rogue that cares about clashing with your opponents. And when you win clashes, which is reveal the top of your deck and compare mana values, when you win, it lets you cast a spell that costs 8 mana or less without paying the mana cost. So here we have a commander that does care about the number 8, and it caps at that specific point. So you want to lean, towards a good number of high drop cards in the deck after all. But actually the real thing is that you're trying to win those clashes. Set up the top of your deck, and usually it's going to be a lot of the cheaper spells in this list here, but then also make sure that you've got a good density of high cost stuff, so that when your opponent flips over a 3-drop or whatever, you've got it covered. You win the clash because you flipped a 5-drop, a 6-drop, a 7-drop, and then Marvel will let you play them for free. So that's why we're getting this reverse bell curve. This commander that it has a whole dang extra mana curve on top of it that looks so funny on its graph.
Yeah, well, and I feel like the reason I didn't at least know what it was because it was from those Karlov Manor precons were just like, I don't know, something about those just didn't resonate with me at all, so I kind of wrote it off. But yeah, this is a weird effect because they haven't done Clash since, what was it, the original Lorwyn block? So it's been a long time since this mechanic has even shown up on a card. And so, yeah, knowing now that like you want to have a lot of expensive cards in your deck because you are clashing, I understand why. But yeah, I had no idea this was a commander. Totally missed this set. So yeah, it's unknown, but it is cool that you have something that cares so much about those expensive cards. All right, Matt, let's get one more example here. And I'm actually going to show you two graphs, but this is really emblematic of a certain pattern of a type of commander. And I want to see if we can figure out, why that is, if you can guess what's going on here. To describe these graphs here, both of them, the curve basically starts at 4. For each of them, there's like maybe one or two 1 drops, a couple of 2 drops, like 2 drops or whatever, almost nothing at 3. And then at 4, suddenly there's like 24 drops or like 19 4 drops for each of these commanders. But these are actually representative of a whole bunch of different commanders that have a similar type of ability. I want to see if you can guess what's going on. They're at least doing something. They're starting at 4, but I'm trying to think of anything that starts. What is a theme that typically will start around 4 mana? Because you can't be completely cut off from 1 through 3.
I'm intentionally throwing a harder one at you as our final.
This one is harder. Does it care about it? Does it care specifically about mana value on the cards?
No, it actually doesn't. Great question, though.
Okay.
There are actually several commanders that have this same particular quality about them, and this particular pattern of a huge jump at the 4 mana slot does hold across all commanders that share this characteristic. These are just some big examples.
Okay.
They are representative of a certain type of commander's mechanical capabilities, a style of commander that has a particular ability, in case that is at all a useful hint. And also, in terms of hints, this isn't like some huge class, some huge subsection of commanders, but there are a handful of legendary creatures that do have a certain ability, and this mana curve pattern is basically true for all commanders that share this characteristic, that share this particular ability set.
Okay, so there's a theme amongst them. It doesn't care about creature types.
It does not.
What about card types?
Also no.
Also no. I have no idea.
All right, so that I don't continue to torture you for too much longer, what's going on here is that these are some commanders that are mana dorks. Ruby Daring Tracker and Rana Heir to Kel.
Okay.
There it is. That's the understanding.
Gotcha. Yep. Well, yeah. If the commander's fulfilling a role, you don't need to spend any slots in your deck doing that even more because you already have just universal access to that thing. So... okay, that's making a lot more sense now. So yeah, now I understand why you don't care about 1s and 2s because like you're only going to play Soul Ring Arc. That's it.
If my turn 2 is going to be here's my Ruby or here's my Rada, and then on next turn I'll have 4 mana because my commander is giving me more. This is also a characteristic of any decks that have the Doctor's Companion Susan Foreman, for instance, another 2 mana tap to add a mana type of commander. So that is the commonality that we're going here, and this kind of comes full circle back to the Galanra example that we led with at the very top of the show. When your commander is performing one of those early, definite, always going to do it type of functions, your early turns are spoken for. That absolutely should mechanically influence the way that you're building out the rest of your deck. If you know what your early turns are going to look like, that consistency is something that you can rely upon and should take advantage of with your deck. And we see a lot of players are doing it because it is so beneficial to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool that we see that happening multiple times, though, especially when it's not a partner. That's what's really interesting to me.
Yeah, so if your commander is doing stuff in the early game, if your commander is making mana, make sure that you're factoring that into how it is that you're building your decks, because it is mechanically very worth it. It's going to pay off in dividends for you if you do. Matt, those are a bunch of cool examples of weird mana curves. There are more, but I think for each one of these, it's important to recognize that these are not always just standalone. Sometimes they are representative of other certain patterns. And even sometimes the things that we think would be unusual, like the companions examples, sometimes them as a commander is not actually all that unusual compared to a couple of other things that we're seeing here. And I teased earlier in the episode one last fun thing that I thought would be a good final beat to go out on here. I mentioned that we also have access to see the average mana curve broken down by each bracket. What does the curve look like at bracket 3 or bracket 2 or bracket 4? Let's put that on screen now here. Matt, what's your reaction to this image?
I mean, CEDH knows exactly what they're trying to do, and they do
it does.
I like this just because shows how standout and just like how stark of a different feeling even bracket 5 is, because I know CEDH people, they love the format because of how different it is, and it truly is its own metagame, as you can see on this chart.
Yeah, this is such a funny image. When we compile all of the average mana curves across each bracket, it turns out all of the brackets look exactly the same, except for CEDH, except for bracket 5. So bracket 1, as its mana curve goes, doesn't look any different than bracket 2 or 3 or even 4. Bracket 2 does not look different than 4. Brackets 2 and 3 don't look different. Those are all conforming to basically exactly the same type of line, the same type of mana curve distribution. But bracket 5, CEDH, it's peaking in a different place.
It definitely does. Well, and what's really cool to me is that brackets converge at that density of the 2 mana slot.
Right.
That is what it like really stands out to me, because no matter what you're doing across all brackets, you probably have the same density of 2 drops as everybody else in the format.
Yeah, exactly. But then for the bracket 5 curve, it peaks at the 1 drop slot. And it also has more 0 drops.
Yep. That's where you see a bunch of density, because you have all your Chrome Moxes and those types of cards there showing up in bracket 5. And then 1 drops, like you have a ton of cantrips, you have a ton of 1 mana spells.
Definitely operating as much as possible a full turn earlier, if not 2 turns, because of the extra advantages that you get by saving that much mana. So yeah, very telling, and just a very funny final image that I thought was important to share, that a bracket 2 deck can have exactly the same mana curve as a bracket 4 deck in some of these cases. It's interesting to compare these averages.
Yep.
That's kind of the theme of the episode, isn't it? All of these are standing out in unusual ways. These are all mana curves that do not look like all of the rest. They do not conform, but there are really good reasons for each of them to have to stand out in each of those ways. That's important. We don't want our decks to look exactly the same, because sometimes they're trying to do something that is deeply unusual. If you're storming off, you shouldn't have your mana curve look exactly like Matt's Vivictus deck, etc. So
you shouldn't. You might want to, but you should not.
Yeah, so these are important lessons to keep in mind, and to remind yourself that sometimes when you're standing out for these reasons, it's actually because it's going to work out a whole lot better for you. And I definitely want to hear from other folks out there what their strangest mana curves look like. If you've got those in your deck building sites, what are the curves that are going all wonky? What are the ones that are spiking up and you have 28 3 drops or something like that? What's the reason? What are the reasons out there that you've got for deviating from the norm? Because it's so fascinating to see what it is that people are doing with their decks in these ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think on that, we're going to call this one to a close. Matt, thank you for letting me torture you with this guessing game here, trying to figure out what it is.
I mean, I still think I did. I think I did pretty good overall, though. Like, I had a few good shots. There were some, nobody's going to guess some of those, I think, anyways. If you did, let us know in the comments, because, that's where the true genius is lying.
You getting any of these is really impressive. I'm actually very pleased about that, because there are 10 billion thousand quadzillion commanders out there. So
there are, yeah.
Good on you. Yeah, I'm impressed. I hope that other folks had fun following along with that game aspect of this episode too. But yeah, let us know what your strange mana curves are out there. With that though, we got to call this episode to a close. Matt, if folks want to find you online, where is it that they can locate you?
So you can find me on pretty much any social media platform, whether it's Blue Sky, Instagram, whatever. It's all the same. It's at Mathimus55, MATHIMUS55. And don't forget, we are so proud and so excited to work with Dragon Shield across all of these new amazing products they have coming out all summer. So head to dragonshield.com/EDHREC. Use code EDHREC when you check out, and you're going to get yourself a little discount on all the amazing new products.
And you can find me everywhere online, from Instagram to Blue Sky, at Joseph M. Schultz. You can find the cast online at EDHRECast if you would like to support us on Patreon. Bunch of fun perks over there. And also one more shout out to Cardsphere, a fantastic place to get trading. If you want to get a hold of any of these commanders or any of these cards out there, any of those new Paradigm cards that Matt is so excited about, Cardsphere is a great way to trade into the cards that you are looking for, or trade away the cards that you're not using. With that, we hope you've enjoyed this one. We'll be back at you next week with even more data and insights. But until next time, everyone, remember, EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.